the Nebraska Cornhuskers at the Minnesota Golden Gophers. These are two teams coming off wins in week 7, and they are looking to keep their momentum going. Nebraska comes into this game 5-1. Minnesota is 4-2. Nebraska is a 7.5 point favorite coming into this game on the road. And I think many Minnesota fans would probably question why that is the case, but when you look at how these two teams are playing, there's clearly one team that has a little bit more confidence than the other. That being said, don't count the Gophers out. This is still a very tough team to beat, and Nebraska isn't without their flaws either. Now, Dylan Raiola is kind of the epitome of that. We've seen a guy who's been able to make some good plays, and it's clear that Dana Holgorsen is the right offensive coordinator for him. That being said, last week was kind of the perfect example. You have a guy who threw 4 touchdown passes, but also threw 3 picks. There's clearly an inconsistent style of play so far this year that you'd like to see him sort out. And against good competition, Dylan Raiola has had his struggles. He's also had success, but he's had his struggles. So if you want him to take that next step, or if he's going to, if Nebraska is going to take that next step and be a playoff contender, you need your quarterback to play better. And he's played really well. Dylan Raiola has played really well. Over almost 1,600 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. But it's those lapses, those stretches where he's just not as sharp as he should be, where that could really cost you in a game. Now, the Maryland game gave them plenty of trouble. That's a very good Maryland team. That's a lot better than I think people realize. But at the same time, that's not a game that Nebraska should have been caught up in. That's not a game where they should have been hanging on. You should really give Maryland a lot of credit, but at the same time, I think that Nebraska should have been much better. Now, I'd like to see this offense push the ball down the field a little bit more, not just throwing these short routes, these screen passes. It works if that's what gets the job done, but I'd like to see Dylan Raiola, who has all of the talent in the world, to be able to make some of those longer throws. Now, maybe it's the wide receivers aren't getting open, but if you really want to open up this offense, that's going to happen. That's going to have to happen, and it's going to give this offense another edge that teams probably aren't ready for, to be completely honest. I don't think teams are ready for if Nebraska can move the ball down the field with those intermediate to deep passes. I think that if Dylan Raiola can take that step, they're an absolute problem for anybody they face. Now, if you're going to go against this Minnesota offense with what you've been doing, or defense with what you've been doing, that's fine, but this is a defense that can make you pay. And maybe you have some hesitations about Dylan Raiola hitting guys deep because of certain things with his game. You also might have some reservations based off of the Minnesota defense that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Now, a name that should be familiar to Minnesota fans is Emmett Johnson, the former Holy Angels star who now starts for Nebraska, is off to a great start this year. 105 carries, 650 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. He's also caught 24 passes for 130 yards and 1 score. He's been explosive. He's been a nice, I would say, a nice emergence for this offense. His ability to balance out this offense has been a great thing for Dana Holgorsen, and something that we had a question about coming into this year. We weren't quite sure who is going to be that RB1, who is going to be the guy that takes the majority of the carries. And then at that point, is he going to be able to make enough explosive plays to move the ball down the field consistently and help this offense? Emmett Johnson has answered that question, and it's been a strong yes. Now, the wide receivers, we knew that this was a talented group. Now, we knew that this was going to be a fun group, but who was going to be that guy, or how much depth were they going to have? So far, the answer has been they have multiple guys that they can go to. Isaiah Hunter is someone they brought in via the transfer portal from Cal. 22 catches for 415 yards and 4 touchdowns. Ja'Cory Barney comes back for this year. 26 catches, 364 yards, 3 touchdowns. You brought in Dane Key from the transfer portal. 20 catches, 269 yards, 4 touchdowns. So you have 3 guys that have been proven commodities for this offense. I would just like to see them do it a little bit more. Hunter's an explosive player. Can you get him down the field more? Can you get him in positions to make explosive plays? That's going to be something to keep an eye on, because clearly the talent is there to be even more explosive than they've already been. And they're averaging 41 points a game. They're currently 11th in the country with that scoring. So it's not like they haven't had their successes. It's just that there are things that they could do better and even be even more explosive than what they already are. Now, the defense has kind of been a little bit of the opposite, if you will. I think that there have been times where this group has looked really good, but there have also been times where I think teams have had plenty of success against this group. That is going to be something that has to change this week, that has to be consistent this week. This is a Minnesota offense that isn't as explosive as some of the offenses they've already faced. And this defense, I think, has the ability to be a shutdown defense when they want to be. They've shown it at times. You look at what Cincinnati struggled with against this defense. You look at times what Maryland struggled with this defense. They have plenty of talent to be able to make teams really struggle and struggle to move the ball down the field and put up points. That's going to help your offense that's already shown that it can be explosive. But if the defense isn't doing its part, then what? That's going to be the big question for this team. If you're Minnesota, you're kind of just looking to play the role of spoiler. This is a group that is clearly, I want to call it a rebuild, if you will, but this is clearly not a group that is expecting to make some sort of run. They are looking to surprise a lot of people, and that's been kind of evident so far this year. Last week against Purdue, not a great performance by Minnesota. They do find a way to win that game, but it wasn't their greatest performance at all. Now, Drake Lindsey is kind of going through a little bit of a learning curve. He's trying to figure things out. He's trying to learn what is life like as a Big Ten quarterback. So far, he's looked fairly solid, though. And I say that, you look at his numbers, just over 60% completion percentage, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now, you're probably looking at those numbers and you're thinking, those are fairly pedestrian numbers. And that is very much true. But when you look at the history of Minnesota football at the quarterback position, typically when someone is struggling like this, those aren't their numbers. They're not even over 1,000 yards at this point. They're probably throwing 5 touchdowns to 4 interceptions or something similar to that. It is not nearly as productive as Drake Lindsey has been. Now, part of it is probably going to be the changes in offenses, the type of offense that they're running, but Drake Lindsey has shown at a young age that he is ready to be better than what a lot of quarterbacks have been for Minnesota. And so far, he has shown that at the early stages of a career, he's ahead of some of those other quarterbacks. So there are promising things with them. Now, the rushing attack has been inconsistent, which is kind of disappointing. It also kind of factors into why Drake Lindsey's been a little bit more productive. Darius Taylor, as long as he is healthy, I'm still convinced that he is one of the best running backs in college football. We just haven't seen him consistently healthy. The rushing attack, like I said, too, has not been super consistent, which has been a concern for this offense. The wide receivers have been kind of hit or miss at times, too. When you look at Le'Meke Brockington, he's leading the team right now, 23 catches for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. Javon Tracy's tied his yardage, but done it on 16 catches with 2 touchdowns. Jalen Smith, he is going to be a really fun player to watch for this Minnesota team, assuming that they can keep him around. He is going to be really fun. He's averaging 21.2 yards per catch. This is an offense that has lots of potential, but it might be a little bit of time before we truly see that potential realized. You also have to keep those guys on the roster, especially with this transfer portal era. That might be difficult to do. But if Drake Lindsey sticks around, that makes it maybe a little bit more attractive to guys that are on the roster or even players that are considering coming to Minnesota because you have a young and promising quarterback. Now, the defense has been relatively good, I think. You think when you look at a coaching change, a coordinator change, you knew that that was going to provide some issues, but I think this group has played fairly solid. You've seen guys, the stars of this group, like Anthony Smith, step up at times. You've seen Koi Perich doing a lot of things for this team. You've seen him as a defender. Last week, the pick 6 was obviously phenomenal. You've also seen him line up as a wide receiver. He has been doing a little bit of everything for this team, and that's been really fun. John Nestor's been kind of hit or miss. There are times where he looks really good. He leads the team with 3 interceptions, but there also have been times where you've seen him getting burned or he's getting a penalty called on him. So there are definitely things that he has to fix, but this is a secondary that's going to have their hands full, but they're ready for that challenge. They are prepared to not lock up, but really entertain this challenge that they have in front of them. Nebraska has really good wide receivers that can make you pay. And this is a secondary for Minnesota outside of Koi Perich that is kind of underrated. They're definitely a group that's flying under the radar, and that's going to be a tough matchup for them to handle. Now, in terms of who wins this game, it really comes down to the success on offense that Minnesota has. Their defense is going to have their hands full with this Nebraska offense. But if their offense can't move the ball down the field, it doesn't matter what their defense does. I don't think that Nebraska should be a 7.5-point favorite, but I do think they're going to win this game. I think that they are going to be able to move the ball down the field enough and maybe score at a rate that Minnesota can't match. I do like what the Gophers could do, but it's clear right now that there's one team that's better than the other.